Now that we know what a schema is, let's talk about the types of schemas that you can use. And let me warn you, this can become a pretty supercharged subject. As XML has evolved, let me give you the quick history here. The W3C was involved with trying to set standards and stuff. Once XML began to take off and everybody began to see the power that this would bring, companies began to want to implement XML, but they were implementing it faster than the recommendations and the standards were coming down. As a result, companies like Microsoft kind of went their own way and developed some of their own technologies here, or their own implementations based on some of the current W3C standards. Well, as soon as they did that, then later the W3C would come out with a standard, and it was a little bit different from Microsoft's or IBM's or Sun's or anybody else's. Now what's happened is this has become another one of the nerd battlegrounds over the whole Microsoft, Linux, all that other stuff. Same old territory. My advice to you, stay out of that stuff. Now, do each of these technologies have certain strengths and weaknesses when compared to the other one? Absolutely. So here's what you need to do. Compare the two types and then use the one that meets your needs in the simple, most efficient manner, and the one that's going to grow and evolve with you. Now let's talk about those types, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. The first type is the DTD. This is called a document type definition. Now the purists out there will be quick to tell you this is the one that was first mentioned in the W3C recommendation, and this is the one we're going to use. We'll talk about it in an upcoming video. There's pros and cons to it. The XML schema, this really refers to a whole family of different schema technologies that are out there. And again, get a bunch of computer nerds into a room and they'll fight about something, and if you mention XML schemas, this is what they'll fight about for the rest of the day. Here's the reason why. An XSD, or an XML schema definition, is one implementation of this. There's a RelaxNG implementation of XML schemas, and then there's the W3C XML schema language that has now come down. People who use RelaxNG don't particularly care too much for the others. People who use XSD may not care about RelaxNG and so forth. So again, we'll talk about what's different about these types and actually look at some in upcoming videos, and you can make your own decision. But again, either one of these is going to be used to provide the ability to validate our documents. Now here's what I'm talking about. If I have an XML document that I want to trade information with other people via XML, I can create a schema document that is based on the structure of this XML document. Okay, and I'm just going to put an S here for schema. Now obviously, since this schema was created off this document, if I check that document with this schema, it will show up, check out. It's valid. If I'm getting ready to send XML data out to somebody, I can take my XML document, my new one, check it against that schema, and if it's okay, send it out. Now what about somebody over here who's trying to submit me data via XML? If I give them a copy of my schema, they can take their XML document that they've generated, check it against my schema, and if it checks out, then they can now pass me XML data in, and I know it's in the right format and structure. Let this be what drives you. Tend to stay out of this negative world about arguing about what type of schema to use. Again, usually the environment will dictate which one you should use, because you're either going to be working in an environment where they're using DTDs freely or they're using the XML-based schemas. Don't get in the fights, just use one. Again, XML is still not set in stone. The standards are a lot harder than they used to be. They're a lot more firm, but they're still subject to change. Make sure you take from this video what the schema does and what the major differences are between the two, but try to leave out all the bickering about who should be used and which one's a real schema and so forth. So in the next video, we're going to dig a little deeper into schemas.